setting up to max, and we are here today for yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Gang, we've got a show for you today. First and foremost, I will disclose that this is a sponsored panel. The topic has been sponsored by Rebellion PAC. None of these people have been paid for their opinions, however, right? No one's being paid to take a stance one way or another. We are here to have a conversation, and that's what we're going to do. And what is that topic, you may ask? Today, we are going to be talking about harassment in social media. Is the cure worse than the disease? What is harassment? How does it play out in different formats in the online world? We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about maybe some solutions to it, what we should do as a people, as a culture, as a country even, and we'll get to it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all to my audience for watching the show, and we're going to start by passing the ball to Not So Erudite. Go ahead. Give us what you got.
Damn, not even an intro question. Okay, so to prep for this, I did a bit of a lit review, a not super intense one necessarily, because I didn't want to overwhelm like Lactoid or Tuna specifically with pages and pages of articles that they had like 2 days to read on. So we've got, I hope you guys noticed I added 2 today, okay? Only 2, all right? I was trying to be good. I almost added a 3rd, and I was like, no, this would be me. Because, and it's actually interesting, I feel like the 10 to 12 articles that we have kind of highlight one of the most interesting things to me about this topic, which is that we have basically no data on this, particularly with harassment, which is a super complicated, nuanced thing. When you look at literature on online harassment, it includes comments like, "You're a fat, ugly bitch," to like serial doxing, right? And all of this is captured under the totem of harassment, when obviously these are completely different behaviors. And the way that we tackle them, you know, we might say, well, I don't really care about people being mean on the internet, but I definitely care about them like doxing and like posting revenge porn. And so I guess I'm opening with essentially, it seems to me self-evident from all of the bulk of psychological research that we have on social media and about negative bullying and stuff like that, that harassment for people online is not going to be good for them. I don't think that's a shocker to anyone. What I think is more interesting is the question about how you tackle that, because in many ways the internet is the Wild West, and so it immediately brings up like questions like that lock and oh, he's gone. He hates us. Should I pause?
No, let's keep going.
Well, I think he's off stream, so I feel like he'd want us to wait.
He might have crashed. Well, check the website real quick. Yeah, it might be that his...
I think his whole system went down.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, dang. Okay.
WIC!
Get ready for a reset.
Oh, no. Hey, at least I'll say all that faster.
Oopsie.
So just so you know, Kyla, I am going to take contention with some of the things you're saying in your opening remark. It's not so much I'm disagreeing. It seems at odds with other things you're saying. So I can't wait to get into that. Oh no, his power flickered.
It was just power. It's not even... Okay, well, at least that means that he can... Well, hopefully nothing got damaged, I guess.
Do you think we're streaming right now? Do we know?
I'm not streaming,
I'm
so...
streaming.
Huh.
I was not told I could.
Losers. Hey, Lactoid.
Oh,
No, I mean, I assume you're doing the work. You should stream. I'm just letting you guys know I'm not streaming. So... If you want to say a whole bunch of slurs, it'll only impact...
Oh my god.
Wait.
What's your favorite slur, Lactoid?
Tier list.
It's the F slur, isn't it? I can feel it coming from you.
I think it's the N-bomb. That's probably your favorite.
Whoa.
No, I think he's too like middle-class white.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think he's too middle-class white to really like the N-word.
I like the really old ones. Those are really like
the F slur. Damn, I'm so good.
I don't. That one just doesn't roll off the tongue as well, honestly.
What about what is it? Douchebag. I didn't know this, but douchebag is actually a really, really old slur.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like really considered hyper offensive like 100 years ago.
is it similar? Is it viewed like? How do you guys feel about chuny? Because some people think that's a really bad word, and other people like don't even know what it is.
I don't know
what
what
word?
that is. Yeah.
Chuchi?
Okay, chuny. It's like an Australian
My-
slur,
Oh.
not
It
for
just
Aboriginal
flickered and
people.
everything.
For, like,
I thought
my
you
bad.
said
Give me a second.
Welcome
Chuchi,
back,
as in,
Wick.
like,
Yeah, we'll be back in like 2 seconds. Let me turn all the things on. Again, I really
you
apologize.
may as well
I
do it as a restart.
Oh, I
Yeah,
should've
let's
paid
just
I don't know why.
restart the whole
Everything.
thing.
I forgot
Let's
to ask.
restart the whole thing.
Sorry about that.
So maybe like
Let's
do
harass Wick. Let's harass
Read 'em.
Wick. It'll be great.
I'm ready.
Oh yeah.
Give me a sec. Let me pop you up. Okay. Okay, I think we're live again, gang. I apologize. I don't know what happened. My power flickered. Everything reset. I don't know what's up with that. Anyway, hopefully it doesn't happen again. Oh, please God. Okay, well, welcome one and all. We're gonna start again. Welcome one and all to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about things political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, have we got a show for you today? If you missed it the first time, this is a sponsored panel by Rebellion PAC. Thank you. No one here has been paid for their opinion, however. We're all here to discuss a topic. What is that topic? Harassment and gaming. Okay? Harassment and social media. Apologies. Harassment and social media. Give me a second. Let me calm down. Okay. Is the cure worse than the disease? What constitutes harassment? What should we do about it? All these things and more. We got a show for you lined up. We're going to hit you with it. We're going to give the ball first to Erudite to kind of explain the literature on this, scientific literature, and then we'll go from there. Sound good, gang? I hope it does.
Let's
There you
do
go.
it.
Erudite, sorry again.
Just confirming, you're live on YouTube, right? I just didn't see your YouTube pop.
Am I not? Gang, am I live? Can you see me?
I see you on Twitch.
Mm-hmm. Do you not see me on YouTube? Give me one moment. Am I not? Hold on. Give me 1 minute. Can you guys not see me?
Yeah, you're not live on YouTube right now.
Moment. It says the thing is up. I'm looking at it. Did I not hit the button? I did. Connect streaming. No, it says I'm live on here. Technical difficulties. Give me a moment. I don't know why this is of all days.
Yeah. It's probably YouTube side at this point. It might be that your stream key reset when your computer hard reset.
Here, I'm going to turn it off and turn it back on. That's going to work. I promise you, gang. Give me a second.
Are there any bad?
Okay, it's live on that. It's looking good. Going to exit out of this and rebring it up. We'll get it. We'll get it.
I believe in you, Wick. You can do this.
Okay, are we live? We should be live on Twitch. We should be live on Kick, and we should be live on YouTube. It's coming up on YouTube. I'm seeing it. Do you guys not see it? Are we good?
There we go. Yep, you're
Yeah,
good.
we're good.
Golden. We
Great.
did it.
Take
We did
3.
it.
Hey, gang. Today on WIC TV, we're going to be talking about harassment in social media. Is the cure worse than the disease? We have a paucity, if you will, of data on this. So how do we handle it? What do we even do? This stream is sponsored by Rebellion PAC. Maybe never again, but for today, yes. And we're going to pass the ball to Natsa Erudite to start us off for take 3 in this lovely, lovely adventure that we have. Go ahead, Natsa Erudite. Give us a go.
Yeah, so I got to do a fun little lit review in prep for this show, and that has been shared with everyone. I did my best to try to collect both pro and against evidence as much as there is, and as Wick said, there's kind of a lot of literature gaps in this. Obviously, trolling didn't even start until like the 1990s. The internet didn't really exist ubiquitously until I would say like 90s, 2000s. So it's a really new phenomenon, and research tends to be slow. What I would say is that it seems like social media has some pretty obvious detrimental effects, particularly to younger individuals. And I think there's no reason to believe that online harassment wouldn't also be detrimental to an individual. And the beginning research that we have on that does suggest it. The issue is that this is complicated. It's complicated by the fact that most of these studies on harassment include anything from like insulting and name calling to serial doxing. And revenge porn, which are obviously very, very different extremes of behavior. And therefore, the product by which we address this through policy is left even more complicated because it's possible the policy that addresses, for example, the extreme behavior doesn't address the less extreme. And then probably on this debate, we'll have some arguments of whether or not we should even bother addressing the more minor behaviors. And then a little bit in my literature today that I found is some looking at the nuance of how harassment impacts online celebrities and internet figures versus like a normal individual, and kind of the disparity that these two populations also experience. That I think is really interesting. And that's kind of the overall capture to start us off.
Great. Well, thank you for being here. It's a good overview, and we'll get into the nitty gritty. Brianna, go ahead. Give us your opening statement and take.
So, full transparency, I want to talk about why Rebellion PAC sponsored this. Obviously, I've been talking a lot more since October 7th about hate online and, the anti-Semitism that I perceive as really being increasingly a problem. So, the ADL put out a study we're going to talk about today, talking about this real rise in, anti-Semitic harassment that's happening online. And I was really thinking about this, Wick, that it seems like, 10 years ago with Gamergate, we had a very specific set of conversations, right? And I think probably I would be embarrassed by some of the policy things I advocated back then. I have a much... especially as I've seen the reporting tools used to go after people in really bad faith over and over and over again, I don't have the same strident opinions on online harassment that I used to. At the same time, I looked at this study and I saw some other studies, and it's really apparent to me that this is a problem. It's getting worse in some ways, and Kyla, we'll get into it later, but from everything you've shown in kind of the prep doc review for this, it seems like this is having real world impacts on people's health, at least like social media in the aggregate. So, what I wanted to do was to take a step back, have a different conversation about online harassment than the one we were having a decade ago, really make this policy focused. I think we need to take this problem seriously. I think some of the proposals to address this, they've been put forward by people like the ADL. This makes sense to me. What I'm really not sure about is how we balance that with things like free speech and open expression. So, Wick, you were very famous for being very, very pro free speech. Lactoid, you're so libertarian that I just assume you're very much for that argument. And I just thought an adult discussion with some of the smartest people I know, I thought it would be a really good way to reset this conversation.
Well, thank you for that. And I don't know about the smartest people but we're going to try today. Okay, we're going to try. But thank you, obviously, for agreeing to come and talk about this, because it is a topic that I think we we have to really address. But I want to pass the ball to Lactoid, since he was name dropped there, and then we'll finish off with Tuna Chip's take. So go ahead, Lactoid.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of not only the First Amendment as it relates to government action, but I'm also generally in favor of freedom of expression. There was a famous case out of California, it was a long time ago, and the Supreme Court ruled in it. It ruled in it based on California law, not the First Amendment necessarily. But one of the concurring opinions, the name escapes me right now, but the opinion was essentially, the case was about a group of students who were protesting the Vietnam War in a shopping center, and they were removed. And the Supreme Court justice wrote, in a world of ever increasing privatization, where more and more discourse is being owned by private companies, the sphere of freedom of expression is consistently shrinking unless we have expectations of free expression within those privately owned areas. And I think that's a real problem, right? I think we especially saw this during the pandemic, when a lot of people were prohibited by law from meeting in person, and really the only place to express themselves was on the internet. I think harassment policy is oftentimes weaponized to silence opinions that people may not want to hear or people may not want to agree with. I think that, perhaps when it comes to children, I could see having extra protections for them. But generally speaking, I think adults, especially with all the tools that exist, like blocking and you can remove people from your feed. I think that I'm generally in favor of people being allowed to say what they want to say across every platform.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. And I'm sure we will get into the nitty gritty and how that applies today as we go. Last but certainly not least, the Tuna Chip himself. Tuna Chip, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Wick? So my main opinions on the topic are informed by my thoughts about online harassment, where technology is going in terms of updating what people are able to do and what people are able to leverage towards harassment, basically the changing nature of what it means to be online, because online is not a static thing. So in one sense, I do think that the data and the changes that have been made are pretty solid. They look like they're going to work for now and maybe the foreseeable future, but I am concerned that it sets a precedent that going into the future, we will just keep changing with the technology, and it will push us towards a more dictocratic, a more hyper-authoritarian position. And that what we should be doing instead is stepping away from this idea of intervention and stepping more towards having a more healthy relationship, especially in youth, with technology and social media.
So well, thank you for being here. Thank you for that. We will get into it as we go. But I want to start by asking the panel a question, right? In this world where we have, as Lactoid said, privatized ownership of these platforms that will have different tosses, different ideas of what harassment even is, how do we draw the line or make the distinction between disagreement and harassment? Because as has been noted by Tuna Chip here, the tools that we build to stop harassment are often used as tools of harassment in and of themselves.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start with tossing it to Brianna and Erudite. And how do we square that circle? How do we bridge that gap? What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to give a little bit of pushback on the question itself. I don't think the policies are like accept harassment or don't accept harassment and allow these tools to go forward. I want to just go through some of these, like from the ADL study I was talking about earlier. I want to really list these. Okay, implement industry-wide policy to address how hate targets specific identities. Let me tell you how I did this with Twitter, right? There used to be a policy at Twitter where you could send a black person that you were disagreeing with a picture of a cross on fire. I know what that means. I think a lot of black people know what that means, but Twitter themselves did not know what that means and couldn't tie it to a harassing context. So this is just getting more data from communities about what kind of speech, what hate speech looks like for them. That's entirely reasonable. Incentivize and promote pro-social behavior through design. League of Legends does this. It's a better game for it. That's entirely reasonable. Rather than reduce trust and safety headcount, expand it. I think anyone that's been on the new Twitter can talk to you about how much harder it is to get death threats and rape threats processed. I deal with this repeatedly. Strengthen content moderation tools for in-game voice chat. Again, this is utterly, utterly reasonable. So I hear what you're saying, Lactoid, genuinely. I think that there are ways for us to balance these issues. Make sure people can have open expression, people can be themselves, but we can create a better gaming experience for people. And just one last thing I'll say here, we have a lot of studies on this that show people don't want to play games with assholes. Games with toxic environments are not fun to play. People don't stick around for it. So I think this is not just about hate speech. I also think it's about good game design.
If we're talking about just if we're referring to games, I can see there being more of a impetus to restrict certain, if you're just joining a game and just screaming the N-word. I mean, this is obviously not conducive to the game. It's not conducive to the purpose of why people are there. And obviously it's a private organization and they can ultimately here do what they want. I guess I'm more referring to things like social media when it's my main concern, because a lot of these platforms are used as political platforms by people, and I have seen pretty frequently people claim, oh, this is harassment, or with certain arguments, oh, this is violence, right? If you make this argument, you're actually engaged in violence by making this argument. We're going to try to take you down, right? It seems to be there's a rise in weaponization of that, and that's really what I'm trying to avoid, because I don't want people to be afraid of making an argument because, oh my God, this person might consider it harassment, or even criticizing a figure, right? I mean, can you imagine if we're all dumping on maybe not me so much, right? But a lot of people here are dumping on Trump quite a bit. If he was like, oh, this harassment online needs to end. Well, no, you're a public figure. You've kind of accepted this role, and you're going to get criticism, and it's going to hurt, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Kyla, can I bring this back to something you said and get clarity on it? In your opening statement, you were talking about how there's a really big difference in, say, hardcore doxing and what was your other statement? Was it harassment or insults? And you were talking about it as if one mattered and the other didn't. And then you were linking to some other research I was reading that did seem to show that all this stuff online has real world effects on people, especially teen girls. So I'm not disagreeing, I'm just trying to understand your reasoning. Why does one matter less to you, or why does one issue seem valid and the other doesn't?
In my mind, things that would be criminal if they weren't occurring on the internet need much stricter regulation. You couldn't dox people IRL, you couldn't serially stalk them, you couldn't run around and put posters up everywhere saying Brianna Wu is this sort of thing, just everywhere she goes. You couldn't contact every single personal contact of a person who's a coworker, for example, to see if they've sexually abused you or any of their friends, and continue to do that for months and months straight. This would result in criminal charges. And so these are the types of behaviors that I think need to be managed better. Whereas being mean, I agree that promoting pro-social behaviors in general benefits society. The problem is that to act like we know how to socially engineer that when we can't even do it effectively in our playgrounds, I think is really dangerous. And I think that what happens is ineffective policies that make people feel like they've done something, but it does almost nothing to actually change the behavior, and the outcomes fundamentally occur the same. When we're talking about social media for young women, for example, it's very hard to tell to what degree the online harassment versus sleep deprivation versus basically upward comparisons is driving the rise in mental illness. There's no doubt that social media is causing a drive of mental illness, particularly amongst teen girls, but also teen boys. The problem is that the literature doesn't fine-tooth comb it out enough to show clearly that it's cyberbullying or insult versus just being on the platforms and the nature of them themselves. Now, like I said, I suspect that it is. I just don't know if I'm comfortable making strong recommendations about how we socially engineer this behavior.
I think that's fair. I mean, but like according to the stuff you were showing, all of this stuff is on the rise. I mean, you know, you look at from 2014, it was 7%. This according to Pew, 7% people experienced physical threats. That went to 14% just 6 years later, and this is across the board. It's for stalking, sustained harassment, sexual harassment. So I hear what you're saying genuinely, and there are certain public policy areas that I would treat as more serious or a bigger priority. But I think, Lactoid, coming back to your kind of contention, or I don't think that you want to do nothing, but I think the fact that this stuff is rising so precipitously, because I'm going to assume these trends have escalated, I think there's some role for public policy in how we address this. And just one more thing, hate crimes against Jewish people were at the highest level ever recorded before October 7th, right? I can't even imagine how bad that is now. We also know it's a similar on the rise with Muslim students. So I feel like you'd combine that with this ADL study that shows this real spike in anti-Semitism online. It seems like a public policy problem we need an answer for.
Just for clarity, so I know what you're talking about. When you say that the anti-Semitic hate crimes and Islamophobic hate crimes are on the rise, you're talking about offline things that are happening. Okay, just wanted to make that distinction.
Yes.
Yeah, if you have a response to that, either Tuna or Lactoid, go ahead. Otherwise, I have something.
I can give a quick response just because I was mentioned. When you silence somebody, I don't know what policy proposal you're necessarily talking about. I'd like to get into that, but I think that giving people the tools and the freedom to curate their own content to what they want to see, I think that's fine. And I think giving people more access to that, especially with social media, can perhaps help alleviate some of the issue. But if we're talking about how traditionally these organizations have dealt with this, which is just banning them, right, or removing them from the platform, what you've essentially done is you've taken away everyone else's right to hear, right? Other people who wanted to hear these critiques or wanted to hear these arguments are sort of silenced now. Or not even arguments necessarily. It could just be comedy, right? Whatever the content is, people were enjoying it, and now it doesn't exist. I think that's not as preferable of an outcome as giving people the tools to not watch what they don't want to watch. That's just
I hear you.
I want to get Tuna in on this. Tuna, what are your thoughts so far?
So I'm also interested in knowing what exactly the policy proposition would look like, because I've thought about it for a bit, and I've banked them into two main possibilities that I've seen, which is the first one, which would be that you would restrict the relationship that technology has to publicly owned spaces like schools. That was proposed very directly in the literature that we're referencing. And then the other one would be to directly intervene in the technologies themselves, whether or not that's the social media or something that's being used to harass, such as, I don't know, something like something that would interfere with a person's life. Maybe you're doxing somebody and you're using, technology to automate, sending pizzas or cockroaches to their house, something crazy like that. I have counters to both, but I'm not going to just bore us with each. What are people on the pro intervention side thinking that would look like?
Well, I can give you a really specific example. So, Kyla, one of the research pieces that you posted was looking at what is happening to teen girls, right? Yeah. So just to cite this, please tell me if I get any part of this wrong. But basically, if you increase the amount of time that teen girls are spending on Insta, to basically 5 hours a week, the rates of depression roughly double. So, I would love to see more studies on this showing what's kind of driving that depression. But just, like my guess would be Insta is such a visual place to look at. It's always like, look at these people having wonderful lives out there, that it's a lot of content that invites you to hate yourself and your body. So maybe there are things in the algorithm that we could change to be more cognizant of what the algorithm is showing people. Yeah.
Do you have a specific example that we can tackle, right? So when you say change the algorithm so people get less stuff that makes them mad, it's very vague, it's very generic. Is there anything like specifically you propose?
So every time I log on to Insta, it is always like 20-something girls with gorgeous boobs and, perfect hair and full face and all that kind of stuff. Sure. Oh, no. But I think that can have a certain amount of damage if you're only seeing that and that's your only representation of women. I think there are other things you can show that might be interesting to that. So I'm not saying censor it. The content should always be available for people that want to go seek that out. But when it comes to like what the algorithm is going to show you, which is essentially an editorial choice, I do think we should be looking at the data. And I think some part of this, just like it does in an editorial newsroom, I think it should be going, what's good for the public? And I think the problem is all these incentives are always driven towards maximum engagement. And we know it's making us unhappy. I mean, Kyla, am I wrong about that?
I mean, it is making us unhappy. I guess I'll be even bolder. I think essentially anonymity will fundamentally probably have to go from the internet. I just don't see it lasting. I don't know how it does last. Anonymity will probably take care of like 90% of the mean comments, because most people who say mean comments, you get them to come on a voice call, you get them to show up in person, they wouldn't say it, they wouldn't do it because there's a social repercussion for calling every woman on the internet a cunt, right? Like, not a good look, especially if people know it's like you, John Williams. So I'm actually pretty pro getting rid of anonymity on the internet. I just don't really see how it fits into our future that's so like internetized. Even though, just to be clear, I understand that like Hobbes right now is like rolling in his grave and screaming and clawing his eyes out and whatnot. I understand that there's an immediate question of security versus privacy that immediately emerges. I don't actually know. I don't know how we don't end up doing this. And this would also help with the behaviors that I would argue are criminal in nature. They're just on the internet. So some states have revenge porn as a criminal charge, right? That's good. Should probably be all states. Doxing also probably needs to be criminalized and defined like in a legal way so that we understand what doxing is. TikTok has multiple accounts dedicated. It's called Dox Talk. They're just massive. Like Dinesh, Rectorcist, Tizzy Ent are all content creators with millions of followers that basically make money from finding people who are being like racist in a video, doxing them, and then releasing their information to all of their followers for serial harassment. And they get paid for this.
But Erudite, right? Like the solution to combat doxing can't be, okay, so now everyone has to dox themselves by removing their anonymity. I don't like, I feel like
that's the solution for the meanness.
There's a reason that people mask up during protests. There's a reason that we don't advertise who votes for, like, you can't be compelled to say who you voted for, right? Anonymity acts as a shield to protect us from harassment in a lot of ways, does it not? But I want to pass the ball. I'll let you respond to that, but I want to pass the ball to Tuna Chip because he's got some thoughts too. So go ahead.
It's also, I don't know how this is going to happen in a way that doesn't immediately become government overstep, because we're talking about sites that people like using, and people gravitate towards sites which give them more agency. So when you start governing it on a site-by-site basis, that's not going to work. What's going to happen is that the market is going to produce a version that is a less restricted version of what you're trying to restrict. So that means that you're probably going to have to do it like Sesta Fosta. You're going to have to do it similar to the widespreading anti-piracy measures that we've done. If you do something like that, what's going to happen is that, and we're talking about the flow of information. We're not just talking about like, oh, you can't download something that we can identify using this, that, and the other to belong to somebody. When you do that, you're putting an insane amount of political power into the government over how people communicate. Like, we're not we're not looking at something that I think either political party would trust the other with, to the point where every election is basically saying who gets to own the entire world, who gets to own how people talk, who gets to own, and not only that, if you're the United States government and you have the power and the means to, you're also saying who gets to say what businesses across the entire world do and how much of that is like publicly known. I just think that you're getting to a point where that's like, you don't have to be a libertarian to think that that's government overstep. That's just like huge.
I don't agree with that, though. I mean, God, I don't mean to keep talking at the ADL, but I have worked with them. Like, there are two arms for it. There's the political side of it that does, governmental stuff, but they also have one of these, literally one of the best research think tanks in the world. They've been working. I've worked with them on digital harassment policy for a decade. I've never heard anyone in any conference I've gone to. I've never seen a paper of someone advocating the course of action that you're talking about, which is a massive step up. This is such a false choice. What I see over and over and over again are people saying, look, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have Twitter, you have all these social media networks, and they are maximizing for one thing, which is engagement. And we've got all this science out there that shows us harassment is increasing, the player base isn't enjoying it, it's bringing out our worst tendencies. So all we're talking about is asking these platforms to focus a little bit more about what the consequence is of what they're doing on their audience. This is stuff that newspapers do all the time. I remember after 9/11, there was a huge discussion if they were going to put pictures of the towers falling on the front page because it was going to traumatize people. These are the kinds of decisions that newsrooms have all the time. So you don't have to leap to this maximalist, we can't do anything because of some phantom government, that's going to come take away your liberty, to encourage platforms to make decisions that are in the best interest of the audience.
If I could jump in, I think there's two things that I wanted to address. Number one, you said you have to dox yourself. Well, no, because doxing doesn't just mean releasing your public information, right? Otherwise, that means that every single person who signs up for Yellow Pages or who registers their address or anything like that is doxing themselves in an IRL sense. That's obviously not true. Doxing is when your information, particularly information that you don't want to be connected, is released publicly in a malicious way specifically. To be honest, now that my information is mostly out there, it's significantly less stressful. If every single person's name was somewhat attached to themselves, the reality of a dox threat would be less, and we could more clearly define what a doxing is, because there would be clear parameters of what is released and what is obviously not released, like your SIN card. Going to the government overstep, it probably does feel like that. The question that I essentially have is, whether we like it or not, I don't know how we get away from this, right? When we first invented the Social Security Act in 1935, and everyone had to get a SIN card, and everyone had a tax number that affected every part of their life. It affected their taxes, their job, workplaces had to register your SIN number to work with you, and all of this stuff was significantly more trackable. I imagine lots of people felt that was a major government overstep. And I guess the argument would have to be, is it? I don't feel that it was, and I don't know how we avoid this, especially if we want to do things like expanding, for example, ancient crimes unit divisions. I don't know how we get better about charging child pedophiles and finding them, or people who traffic literal aggressive rape porn with actual victims, or are trafficking people. I don't know how we get a handle on top of this if there isn't some allowances that is given to the government to have greater access to the internet, even though I agree it's scary, and I would be super open to a whole bunch of ideas about how we do this, but I don't think anonymity on the internet is here to stay, and I don't think it should.
Can I ask a just super quick clarifying question on that? How do you square that? Yeah.
Just real quick.
Go ahead.
You can, but I want to make sure that the other people get a chance to respond. So ask your clarifying question, and then we'll...
Would that include children? Because, children, especially on game platforms, would you see children as needing to give up their anonymity as well?
That's a nuance that I'd be super open to discussing. Probably not, but also probably more places would not allow certain ages to be on their platform at all.
Fair enough.
for obvious reasons. So I'm open to the nuance of what that could look like. But even if you say, okay, if you're under 18, you can have an anonymous account, then everyone just knows if you're anonymous that you're under 18, which maybe that is good. Maybe that works out actually in their favor, that you can't figure out who you are just if you're a minor. But maybe that's painting a giant fucking target on their head for every single groomer and pedophile out there. So I'm open to the nuance of what this would look like with children specifically, but we're pretty consistently as a society used to having uniform laws of like security and responsibility that is augmented for children specifically.
Okay. Give it a go. Either Lactoid or Tuna Chip. Up to you.
I got one for the anonymity, which is that on two levels. One, I think that anonymity is so incredibly baked into the internet as we know it that a complete redesign of the internet, how it functions, what it looks like, is. I don't think that it's inevitable. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that it's more likely that, one, the government would never pass the complete abolishment of anonymity on the internet, especially the United States government, mainly for the sort of aesthetic and the we're not China kind of thing, but also because it's a huge economic loss. Like, we'd be spending tons of money to throw away the one advantage we have, realistically speaking, over other extremely powerful world powers like China, which is that we have this fluid, open, actively signaling body of information that's going from place to place, that we have like an open market of information. To reply to the other bit, which is, because Kyla's on one sense saying that, Erudite's saying that on one sense. Also, this idea is, how can the internet keep going without anonymity? Easiest way to say that is that I think Web 2.0 is going to die. I think social media and user-generated content is going to collapse under the weight of itself due to automated content far sooner than we're going to need anonymity. I think that we're going to be inundated with so much noise that all of this information is going to go into like a noise cloud where it requires extreme amounts of intent to pull it. The amount of automated moderation, automated content production, automated, like all of these bots, we are getting to a point where social media is just not going to be the way that we use the internet. TikTok is close to the future of how we use the internet. This like constant feed of not our individual strangers, but an anonymous, everybody's a small fish in the world's biggest sea type thing. I think that that's going to happen for a little bit, to the point where online bullying for people inside of a school, it's going to make less sense because people aren't going to care about the other people in their school. They're going to care about the big lol cows of the internet for that day, for that week, based on this worldwide feed.
I just disagree. I don't know. I don't see evidence that Web 2.0 or social media is going to die. We'll see versions of it die. I think when you look at like major technological revolutions, that is social media, the reality is like the way the Industrial Revolution occurred and the technologies that we had when it first emerged, those died. And the way that businesses were structured originally, those died. But the foundation of an industrial world never changed. I don't think we are ever getting away from an internet-infused society. And as the internet infuses society more, the reality is that further and further, governments are going to be basically hogtied if they have these anonymous accounts constantly able to do anything at any time, because more and more crimes are going to be done through like the internet web. More and more crimes are going to be facilitated by it. And the reality is that like I don't know what it's going to take, but probably some tragedy before a whole bunch of governments knee-jerk make an anti-anonymity law. I'd prefer instead we think about it, be nuanced about it, and think about the best way that we could bring this about that isn't on the tail end of some major tragedy worldwide tied to some level of internet anonymity. That's what
I want to reply with.
You
I want to
can
reply to this directly because this has directly to do with the anonymity in public.
I
versus
promise
private.
that you can, but as soon as you're done, I want to bring it back a little to the harassment side of things. But go ahead.
Sure. So I don't think that governments need to do this. I do think that I think that websites like Twitch have a couple of examples on why we are going to be getting rid of anonymity on the private end in order to try and hold on to Web 2.0. It's kind of a grim example, but if you look at the public reception to how Twitch dealt with the New York shooting, I believe, oh God, what was it? Buffalo? The Buffalo shooting, the live stream shooter. A lot of people were saying Twitch should have done more, until Twitch put out a statement. People were dissatisfied with the statement. But then there was this open question, what possibly could have Twitch done? So they were able to shut down the broadcast, I think it was like within 2 minutes maybe of the violence starting. But the question on what can Twitch do, some people were saying that they wanted people to not just be able to make a Twitch account and go live whenever they want. They wanted to make it so that you can't just go into type it in. Now, if Twitch were to restrict and make it so that you have to, for instance, provide proof of who you are when you make an account in order for you to stream, to have access to this this open broadcasting technology. One of the main counter arguments to that is that websites like Kick would replace it, the market would adjust. I don't see this being a problem though, because it is sort of a kingmaker situation. If you're big enough, you can set those standards and the market will adjust to that. So depending on what field it is, like YouTube, maybe we will get to a point, and I think we're going to have to because of how easy it is to just mass upload bulk content from like China, these content factories going crazy, to the point where YouTube is deleting billions of videos a day to try and keep their servers ready for more uploads. I think the private sector is going to adjust on its own. It's going to just say, listen, no more anonymous uploading, no more anonymous streaming. You have to attach your identity to it. Maybe social media will do the same.
I wanna give it to Lactoid. He's been trying to get in. He had his hand raised at least. Do you have something on the anonymity? Oh, because we're going to move to harassment.
Yeah, super briefly. I just wanted to say that how much I hate the idea of the government mandating this. Just really want to emphasize that point. Currently, there's websites like Facebook where they demand that you put your real name. That's fine. I think if you want to have a website in which you do that, that's all the more power to you.
I think they're changing that policy.
Maybe they are, and they should be allowed to, right? If an organization wants to allow people to join and to access certain content or provide certain content anonymously, I think that's fine. I think a lot of us probably wouldn't be on the internet or be engaged with the internet if the first time we went to go sign up for anything, we had to put our real identity associated with it. That's a concern that a lot of people have. Going back to, I guess, the harassment things, I just maybe a little more clarity, right? Like, Instagram, my understanding is, I mean, they may not necessarily require that you put your real name on there, but a lot of the content on there, especially the boobs, right? I mean, that's from people uploading their own boobs. This is from people like attractive 20-year-old women uploading their own boobs.
I'm pro boob, just to be clear.
I think it's a good thing, and I think that Instagram or people posting their boobs on Instagram, they shouldn't feel as though they're doing something wrong, or I guess this isn't like some kind of systemic issue that I'm necessarily concerned about. I can see how whenever I see somebody who's super ripped, I'm like, oh shit, well I wish I was that ripped. But I mean, ultimately, that's my problem, right? Not theirs.
Well, to that.
Yeah, actually,
that's
yeah.
Just real quick. That is kind of the argument that I see when it comes, because this is a conversation, right? That if we shield, especially young people, from seeing any sort of quote unquote harassment, that if they can never be criticized, that any time that someone says anything mean to them, that they have a mommy or daddy moderator to come in and take care of it. What we do, the unintended consequence of that I fear, is that we simply make it a world of weak people who cannot deal when they face criticisms that they can't just moderate away, and when they face some sort of quote-unquote harassment that they can't just moderate away in real life. And I think that providing this as a much safer place to be harassed than offline would be, right? There are barriers when you're online that they're just not. If someone is if someone's making anti-Semitic comments at you on Discord or on Twitter, it is much different than someone doing it while they're screaming at your face at college, right? Much different risk levels there. There's much different in how it impacts you. So if we stop allowing people to learn how to deal with it online, do we not just make it so that they can't deal with it at all? They have no mechanisms when that happens inevitably in real life?
So I hear what you're saying, Wick, and I think that's really well said. And just to be blunt, I think a difference in my generation, and I think one of the good parts of Gen X, I'm either the youngest Gen X or the oldest millennial, is there's a resilience that we had that has served me very, very well. That said, I think some of this stuff does go over into real life. At the beginning of this, I was talking about the number of hate crimes, real world hate crimes that are happening to Jewish people, and it's never been higher than it is right now, right? Some of that has to be, in my mind, tied to anti-Semitic speech happening online and a real world tie to that because it does normalize it. I think it's a hard line to get to, but I think a society has an interest to play in making sure that our kids are okay. I mean, Kyla, coming back to your research document, the kids are not okay. Like, you've got stuff here about, suicide attempts. I don't think it was in your research, but we also know this is the most socially anxious generation that we've ever produced in American history. What I see personally when I hire very young people is there's a fear of failure, because they feel like they need to be perfect right out of the gate. That's not always conducive to getting the best work out of people. So I do think that society has a role to play in making sure that our kids are growing up mentally healthy. And I think this comes back to the gaming argument about the massive rise in the number of slurs and real world harassment that's happening from that. I think it's really easy to say, they're kids, it's a free speech issue, they just need to toughen up. But we know the effects of what's happening, and it's not good on their mental health.
So just a quick response to that.
Sure.
I would simply say that I don't know if the fact that you can say slurs online, right, has made any appreciable impact in the amount of anti-Semitic hate crimes. I would more point to that being the result of people who aren't doing what I would consider harassment, but are what I would call, and to be clear, it's still free speech, but hate speech, right? Where they criticize whole groups, right? They're not targeting an individual. They're not targeting anyone specifically. They're not going into your DMs, calling you a Jew or anything. It's just people who have weaponized these narratives, right? To paint like it's a vast Jewish conspiracy, right? Or Israel's the cause of all the world's woes. And we can see that happening. I think that's more correlative, causal, than it would be that you can get called a Jew in Valorant, right? So the thing I have with the ADL study specifically, right? They had the main, not the control group, but the test group. I don't know the technical terms here. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. The test group was having someone play online with the screen name "Proud to be a Jew" or "Proud to be Jewish," and then the control group was, and they don't really
user 246.
Yeah, user 246. In one case, and this is specifically with gaming. So in one case, you have a situation where someone has outed themselves as proud of a certain facet of who they are. Right. Obviously, it's going to be targeted. I don't think that would be different if you said proud to be American, proud to be black, proud to be white, proud to be anything. Because one of the things about online gaming culture specifically is that they will find out what you are proud of or what you are sensitive to, and they will dig in that. And so I don't think that's a good
insult, right? That's the point.
Yeah, I don't think that's indicative enough, in my opinion. But go ahead, respond.
I hear what you're saying on that, Wick, genuinely. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so first of all, if you're getting those kinds of insults, I do think this culture is sending kids off course. And no one here is advocating saying you can't use a slur. No one here is saying the government needs to get involved with that. Literally, no one is saying this. What I am talking about and what the ADL specifically cites is looking at systems and how organized harassment can happen online and how you promote that kind of stuff, how it does lead to a toxic game environment. So respectfully, you're my friend, but it feels like you always leap to this really Orwellian nightmare idea of like erasing speech. And we have so many more tools for that, especially in online gaming. I really do think we have I think a society has a responsibility to make sure kids are growing up healthy, and we are very objectively failing at this.
Can I ask? So, what
Sure.
are the specific policies? We asked this before. So, I mean, what I saw, restricting it in schools. I think this is reasonable. Schools can have, especially like if we're talking like under 18, like high schools, middle schools, fine, no problem with that. But other than that, I mean, the reason why we're so concerned is because oftentimes historically, when people say we need stronger, anti-harassment, anti-hate speech policies, and hate speech has been kind of like you've been hinting at it a couple times. Oftentimes, what results is censorship, right? And
Yeah.
the moderators coming in and eliminating discourse that they see as potentially not conducive to their worldview or potentially violence, right? I mean, this was something that Jordan Peterson had to contend with. There are people arguing that what he was saying was violence. So, I mean, that's the concern. So we're looking for something very specific.
To add the nuance, though, when you introduce moderation, you see two things, right? You typically see increased censorship and a new tool for that, but you also typically do see a decrease of whatever behavior is being moderated out. Anybody who's ever managed a larger community would know this, for example, right? When my community decided, hey, we're done with like the classic woman, classic black person jokes, it's cringe, it's embarrassing, just stop, right? Those behaviors essentially went away pretty quickly. You see Destiny does this with his community. You see all sorts of content creators that do this with the community. So it does work. It also increases censorship for sure, right? And I agree, but I just want to make it clear that when you're saying it increases censorship, something comes along with it, which is typically a decrease in that behavior.
Well,
So here's a very specific policy, Lactoid, just to hit this head on. So strengthening content moderation tools for voice chat. This is a huge problem in games. I don't know about y'all, but I play a lot of online games, and there are minors there sometimes. I'm surely not the only one that has listened to a bunch of creepy old dudes like hitting on really young girls playing these games and like saying some stuff to them, right? Like that's it's really uncomfortable to be around, right? Or you've got the ways that child predators can be in these spaces preying on children. So it's my belief that if you're building a tool in a game where you are literally constructing with engineering something where an adult can interact with a child, I think you have a responsibility to make sure there are safety tools in place there. I mean, that's really common sense, isn't it?
So Nintendo's taking care of this on their end and with their branding by essentially not allowing messaging
voice
services.
chat, and then it goes to Discord, which is not better,
yeah,
right?
And this is what I'm trying to put out, which is that most of the ways that people have tried dealing with this just export it to another community. Like what Kyle is saying, when you try and regulate a behavior, a lot of those people do just move to another community if the reason they were making the jokes was to make those jokes. And then you essentially create this like sort of like pervert cult. You create this like little area somewhere on the internet where the only reason they're there is because they were dejected from another community and they want to engage in the behavior that community wouldn't let them do. Creates these weird like oppositional relationships to those communities as well. Usually those secondary communities become, dedicated hate communities and maybe get harnessed and spiral into another creator's thing, but sometimes they don't. I don't know whether or not creating essentially safe places for hate, places that are like little havens where you don't have to have the pushback, is necessarily the best place. Because if you go inside of a moderation space and you say, hey guys, as much as I like having free speech, you guys have gotten a little too big on this JQ shit, we're banning all discussion of it, you are getting people heading over to communities like Sneakos, heading over to communities that are going to be very, very open about their opinions. Some of them the most extreme, some of them who aren't doing it as a joke, some of them that want to do it as a joke, and then you get a cross-pollination of intentions. You're radicalizing people who they just wanted to be irreverent. And now the only people talking to them about Jews are Nazis, right?
I hear what you're saying, but you didn't answer my question. I was talking about policies like moderating voice chat when there are minors involved. Do you not see how like there's a responsibility if you build something to make sure your users can do it safely? Like this is what and just to address your point very quickly, I always find this to be a really disingenuous two-step, respectfully. If you could not openly dox people on Twitter, a policy you used to be able to do much more easily, and then that had to go over to Kiwi Farms to happen, that lessened the number of people that saw that stuff. So it does lessen it when you force it to go off site. I don't like that answer, but for some of this extreme behavior, I don't have a problem with that. But I really need an answer on this. Do you really think that there is no role for content moderation to play in what minors are exposed to? Because we can show studies all day long that show what's happening to this extremely online generation. It's not good.
I don't think on an emotional and on a virtue level that it has poor intent, but I do believe in a base principle of ought implies can. And I'm not convinced that you can get rid of this harassment, much like the doxing on Kiwi Farms. We know that the doxes, the thing that makes them dangerous, the action that follows up after it, the people that want to do those actions are on Kiwi Farms. The people haven't gone away. The threats are still there.
Let's get really granular here. I gotta push you on this. Call of Duty. Let's say you've got a 12-year-old boy playing Call of Duty, and you've got a pedophile 40-year-old guy, okay? Mm-hmm. And there's no content moderation system built into voice chat. There's no one manning it. If they hear this stuff to be able to report it, there's no fucking tool built into it, theoretically. Let's say for one of the biggest games in the world. Do you not think there needs to be some system in Call of Duty, even if we agree we're not going to get rid of every pedophile on earth, that Activision would have a responsibility to build a content moderation system for that? Because I feel very strongly they do have a responsibility.
No, I don't know whether or not you would call it a responsibility. I think that Activision would automatically put that in, and that they would believe it, not for a virtue reason.
They don't.
Listen, not for a virtue reason. Okay, they don't have the ability to mute. They don't have the ability to report pedophilic predation.
I'm saying across the industry, this is not a norm, and I think it should be. Okay.
I'm saying that the businesses that don't implement that, if they ever got big enough, would get blasted out of success. They would not survive. I don't think that you're going to get an EA or an Activision. I don't think you're going to get a big company to not have reporting tools for when people are saying pedophilic, very often racist, or anything that is like doxing, like, oh, I've got your address, here's your address, here's your name, here's your dad.
Every game has this.
Reports, it just exist already. And any company that gets big enough has a reason to implement it.
Well, can you find me a game that doesn't have a report function? Call of Duty definitely does, right?
Has your reporting function ever done anything? Mine is not.
I have never been in a room in which there's an active pedophile trying to groom a kid. If we're talking about like that case scenario, if we're just talking about, if the proposal is, let's get Chris Hansen on games, that's one thing. But if we're talking about like, how does this relate to like harassment? Is this like, are we just talking solely about children here? Or are we saying like adults deserve some kind of like systemic insulation from harassment?
Look, I'm a big girl. If you want to tell me whatever, I'm dead inside. It doesn't affect me. My statement here is about minors, and you cannot tell me that the systems that are in place for, say, Microsoft Xbox work very well, because it just doesn't. Like, this is why one of the recommendations the ADL was putting out is actually staffing up trust and safety people, because this has been de-staffed across the board in the last 4 years.
Yeah, if that's the complaint, if we just want more moderators on like platforms in order to catch people doing illegal things, I guess that's not too objectionable. I guess I was more concerned about an actual shift of policy and the extent of like, okay, not only are we going to have more moderators, but now, like with Discord rolled out, right, where insulting somebody based on their economic status or their weight is technically against TOS, right? And so that's
stupid,
right?
Yes.
But that's where these organizations are going, right? So we're talking about improving the rules against harassment. Well, what do these companies interpret that as? Well, they interpret that as you call my mom fat, I'm going to get you banned. which is
Right. Which is
an
why-
absolute like pathetic society.
Fair.
Which is why I
100% fair.
suggested in here there has to be a separation between like calling somebody even really, really mean names, right? I'm a woman, I'm white, and I'm 30. So like there's some obvious immediate insults that people are going to go to. I don't
True.
know if I'd ever be comfortable with these people being like banned. And definitely the data shows nobody reports this. Like nobody's going to report somebody because they're like, wow, Erudite's a dirty slut. Nobody's ever going to report that tweet, ever. Nobody cares, right? And to be honest, they probably shouldn't. I think that's an element of like coddling and resilience people need to figure out. However, that's different between, for example, somebody systematically going around and like spreading lies about you as an individual and encouraging it and monetizing off of it, right? That's like an entirely different dynamic that you have to deal with that we vastly do underserve. There isn't really repercussions for it. There's no way to be like going to YouTube and being like, hey, there's like 9 videos about me and they're all like patent lies about me and there's nothing I could do, and you're paying this person to do this, which is crazy.
Well, it's especially with the rise in the amount of content that has come out. Like we see the rise in harassment and things, and I think it coincides with the rise in use of social media, right? The rise in people being online, people engaging in content creation, people engaging with content in various ways that are interactive, right? And we see this line, these lines kind of correlate, and I think it makes sense that it does. But when we talk about like things like this person has spread lies about me, outside of a courtroom setting and just in kind of like a moderation setting, even on panels, right? Even on a small thing such as a panel, if for example Tuna Chip started shouting that Lactoid touched him inappropriately, I am in no position to judge the truth or accuracy of that statement. I can't. There's no possible way that I can suss the truth from the lies. And I think that we're asking a moderation team to moderate based on truth versus lies. It gets really hard. First of all, I think it's impossible. And second of all, I think that even if it was possible, the amount of overhead needed to do that is unfeasible. And third, I think that the incentives for it to become just the powerful people with friends that are on the moderation team being able to push like, well, this person said a lie about me when it actually is kind of just the fucking truth, right?
Right.
It becomes a problem. Does that make sense?
This is like the duality of moderation, the paradox of it. I think Scott Alexander writes a really good essay about essentially how like moderation will probably forever be the greatest quandary of of internet communities, right? Because even Tuna brought this up, which is that, so for example, we could just use my community or Wix community. You have somebody who keeps saying really racist stuff. So maybe you ban that individual. Okay, well, now you've protected your community from having to see that shit. It's about the same as pressing block on Twitter to somebody who's really fucking annoying. Which, to be honest, for most individuals, that's probably sufficient. They should probably just do that if somebody's bothering them too often. The problem is, what do we do at a societal level? Because Brianna's right here too, that this is getting worse. It seems like a lot of young men especially are taking out all of their diaries and internal rage on the internet. Oh no.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Rick!
Oh, we had a
That was
stutter.
quick.
No, we're good.
Thank
We're
God.
good. It was just a
Wow.
Discord stutter.
Still live? It's just Discord? Thank God.
We're still live. We're still good.
Okay.
Discord just
Essentially,
shit the bed.
you have two things you're picking from. Making your own community insulated safe space, which you can do, but it does nothing good for the greater good, and a societal question of saying there are certain behaviors that absolutely are antisocial that we do want to be seen curbed, and we have to socially engineer sophisticated ways to do this, right? And that's why I would say I would like to see an up in trust and safety, but also most of the people who apply to be on trust and safety are fucking cringe, and I don't want them doing it because
you
they're
guys
the
see
exact people I would never moderate, right?
Did you guys see the Google trust and safety person for children
Yes.
put out a bunch of tweets about how actually the rape was actually okay about the October 7th?
Oh my
I don't
God.
think they were
White
on the
people
trust
with
and
crocodile
safety
tears.
team. To be clear,
They were.
on the child. Weren't they on the child advocacy
Yes,
team?
they were on the child trust and
Is that
safety.
trusted? Is that
Child,
trusted?
I believe it was child trust and safety. But this is kind of like the point, right? That the people who are drawn to these positions, right, the positions of power, and this is power, tend to use it as a way to like unironically just harass people they don't like. This
To be
tends to
bullies,
be the
be-
case.
Can I challenge that as
Like
like,
mass reporting, right? I mean, this is
I
the
would
thing.
bet I would bet a lot of money. I'd bet a lot of money that I have an exponential more like I would bet a lot of money that I've spent a lot more time talking to trust and safety teams than anyone else here. Like I've helped set policy. I've worked on this. You can believe me or you cannot believe me. There are definitely cringe SJWs out there. Look at my Twitter. I blast them every single day. That is not people that make it to senior leadership at these companies. It's just not. It is people that value free speech. It's people that understand these are very difficult questions, and they're people that want really middle of the road policies. It is data driven. They bring in experts from every single side to talk to about it, and I don't agree with your assessment. It does not match my professional experience.
Why is Discord banning like fat jokes then at this point? Like we're getting to the point where it's getting pretty ridiculous.
So, okay, Discord, there's a different thing I'm saying for a Twitter or a Medium or a Facebook or a social media company. The people that make it to senior positions there are not cringe SJWs, okay?
Well, maybe
My
Twitter
pushback
now.
on that, much like
But
in the
also
military,
YouTube banned any talk of COVID in any direction. That was
Fair.
a trust and safety policy. It was
Fair.
literally the worst thing I've ever seen.
I
Like
agree.
insane. Yeah.
It was a
So it's like
mistake.
I don't know if, because here's the problem, right? As somebody who's worked with lots of experts fall to expert bias, right? Intellectual bias is the number one bias committed by experts, where they see their own expertise everywhere and they tend to like not be as good at understanding the valid criticisms of their own expertise and like where it falls short in a complex way. And so like this is my concern, is like even if the senior safety staff are this based, which I'll just be willing to grant, they're not the ones looking through all the reports every day and deciding like where things fall.
Fair.
Those are like the Reddit mods, which is like, that's why I have a rule in my community. If you ask to be a moderator, you'll never be a moderator, except for one person named Vagina Crabs because she was super funny and it was a joke. But by and large, we never moderate people who ask for it because it's a red flag to me.
absolutely.
Like, it's a huge red flag. But if you're working at Google, the only people you can hire are people who apply to it. So you already can't use that measure to carve out who doesn't work there at like the day-to-day level, especially.
I have the same rule just off the bat, and it has even still we get mixed results. I love my mod team though; they're great, they're the best. I will say this though as well. This is true in any of these top-down organizations. The military was famous for that. The policies set by your command, by your general, by the people who are the officers and stuff didn't really matter. What mattered was your direct supervisor and what policies they set, right? And how they interpreted the policies that were set up. And the same thing happens when we have the rank and file people who are going through these posts, just like Kyla said, right? And it's how they interpret that policy that matters. And that's really it at the end of the day. And that's why it's so dangerous. And I know I use that word, and I know you get pushed back. I know you don't like it, but this really is kind of this Orwellian, and I know you hate it.
The answer can't be so do nothing. Just to be clear, this is
Why
why I
not?
love Brianna. Because we have a rising amount of harassments. Internet is increasingly diffuse. Blocking people is going to be blocking people doesn't work for me because I'm a social media content creator. I have lots of people blocked. People are still going to say insane shit. And so I've worked into my own life how I manage the insane amount of hatred that I get, that I'm sure lots of other content creators have had to navigate, which is like, I don't read YouTube comments, right? Nick typically goes and like checks like Reddit to see if there's any useful feedback for me. There's little things that I do because like, I don't need to see 9 people talk about how annoying, boring, and awful I am. It's just not really useful. But I do need to see like that one critique who's like, hey, your audio's kind of sucky, true, right now especially, and it would be really helpful if you started like speaking in this way, and I can like kind of adjust the way that I communicate to like appeal to my audience better. And so the issue is that blocking isn't a sufficient answer, and as people are more and more online, blocking is increasingly not a good answer, because if your SEO, for example, God, I learned the most toxic way to troll somebody and fuck with somebody by the SEO of their name. So whatever, KylaTurner.com, and fill it with a bunch of bullshit about them. That way, every time they apply for somewhere using their legal name, guess what's on the top of the SEO? It's usually the .com, and guess what's on there? Whatever their harasser wants there. Good luck getting that taken down. Good fucking luck.
Yeah.
And that's the part where I'm like, there needs to be answers to this, because we would never allow what is essentially criminal behavior IRL. There has to be solutions.
But wait, this happened in IRL, right? Like even before internet times, right? Pre-internet times. When you really hated someone, what you would do is you would call the power company. You would say, hey, I'm this person. I live at this address. We're going on a vacation for a month, right? We don't need our power for this month. Can you turn it off? And you would do things like that. We had phone pranks, all these ways to mess with people, and you didn't have any moderation tools. Were they illegal? Yeah. Did you get caught? Nah, not really, not usually, right?
But at least it was illegal. At least there was that threat. Right now, it's not even illegal.
Well,
It's not even that.
So you could make an argument that, like, if you made a fake website that had lies or defamation, that you could take action to get rid of that, because it's
In
defamation.
America, maybe. In Canada, you can't. You have to have a monetary loss for defamation.
Move to a good
So there's
country. I don't know what to tell. Like in America, we got this principle. It's really based.
Sure.
I like it.
Also, good luck winning that.
I know. I agree.
Just
We can talk about, like, maybe we should make it easier to, like, take down websites that have, like, blatant misinformation, like in terms
You
of
have to
lies
prove
about
who
somebody.
owns the website, right? You have to prove who owns it in the first
Well,
place. Which any good troll who's trying to do this is going to use a VPN.
My
and a
understanding is you could probably make, like, to the host service of the website, you could probably make some sort of, you could send a communication. Hey, this site that somebody is host, or you're hosting this site and somebody is running this website off of it. It's full of defamation, and so I'm going to be taking legal action. I think you probably could get websites shut down that way, especially these kind of, like, bullshit ones. If not, maybe we can have a conversation about how that should be easier. But the thing that you mentioned before was mean comments, right? How we got to go through all these mean comments in order to find the good ones. And yeah, while I agree with you, it might suck to see people be mean. And I try not to be mean just out of being mean. I think kind of pathetic people do that. I mean, to
I'm
some
not
extent,
asking for moderation of being mean.
to some
That's
extent,
not what I meant.
right? Well, exactly. But I mean, it's where it feels like a lot of people are going, right? Like if I'm going through a comment section and people are like, 8 people are calling me ugly and fat or whatever, like, I'm sorry, but there's a reality of when we're public figures, like going back to the Trump example. Can you imagine how ridiculous it would be if, like, Trump was saying, all these people writing mean things about me, this is awful. Why are they doing this?
They hold on, just to interject. Trump has said this. Trump is famous for taking to people like Bill Maher, who called him an orangutan.
He lost.
To court,
and he lost multiple
right?
times for that. Yes.
Which is
Do we think
good.
he should have lost? Do we think he should have lost, or should he have won? I mean, Bill Maher was being pretty mean, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this is what I find so frustrating about this topic sometimes, because it's like we've got all this great research that we did before the panel, and it defaults to this same conversation we've been having for a really long time that doesn't get us anywhere for making better policies. I understand the argument about this fear of overreach. No one here is arguing, Kyla's not arguing that you don't have to deal with mean comments as a public figure. I don't even report, I would say, about 50% of the death threats I get, because they're not specific and credible enough to get law enforcement involved. So I don't know. For the sake of the argument and just show good faith, Lactoid, I will say that I think the progressive movement, which is flawed in ways I've been very public in admitting lately, I do think we've gone way too far on all of this. It was a mistake for Destiny to get banned for Twitch by what looks like saying trans women should not participate in professional sports. This fat phobia stuff, it's ridiculous to ban people about that. We need a thicker skin on issues like that. But at the same time, Kyla is right. She's talking about, like, organized harassment. There is a policy solution for that. And I just wish we could get away from this stupid conversation about this generic threat and get to the smart policies that don't take away free speech. They actually enable speech and allow other people to have a mic. That's what I want to get to. So Kyla, I wanted to ask you, in the research document that you put together before this panel, what was the finding that you saw that surprised you the most as far as public policy?
Public policy? I mean, there's no data on public policy, to be clear. There really isn't. I guess the main finding I was surprised by was to see India and Spain both did like natural experiments where they basically, like, India banned TikTok wholesale, and Spain had 2 different areas in their country. One of them got rid of all like phones during school hours, and we saw like massive reductions of specifically in-person bullying actually as a result of these things, and grades improve. So that was interesting. I wouldn't say it was surprising, but it was interesting to see. What was mostly interesting to see is that nobody's really looked into this. Nobody's even looked into the nuance of harassment versus from like a public figure perspective, and whether there might need to be different types of moderation that occur there versus like a private individual who's just like on the internet to like connect with their friends and family and like all around a little bit. That was like the most interesting to see, that there is some literature starting out of Japan specifically looking into the impact of social media on influencer, celebrity type individuals. Yeah.
I found the suicide stuff you were talking about really, really interesting. Like how basically, there is a risk on these platforms, especially with younger people, of it driving like mass suicide, that there's no direct studies about that, but how it does seem to increase suicidality. I mean, again, I'm an adult. I've got thick skin. If someone tells me to kill myself, I don't care. I don't think a 12-year-old should be dealing with that, especially in an organized harassment way, which happens all the time. I mean, like tuna fish, does that not feel like a problem we need to solve to you?
I always love being called tuna fish. No, it's not that I don't think suicidality needs to be solved. It's just that I'm not necessarily confident that the data proves that more social media use means suicidality. I think that it means that there is comorbidity. I think it means, I would say that being the type of person who is suicidal, whether or not that's alienation, whether or not that's the fact that you don't have a social network, whether or not that's that the relationship you would have with your family and your community is such that you need to find family and community and belonging online in a place where you can't trust people to give it to you safely. I see those as being more likely correlates, and it feels like horse before cart at that point to me, or cart before horse, whatever.
I mean, we do have like robust research. And some people would argue that it's not true, that social media unquestionably is causing mental health problems. Unquestionably, just broad social media usage.
Oh, yeah.
So the issue is that if social media increases a whole bunch of predictive factors, I don't think I've seen the data looking into predicting specifically suicidality with number of hours. I wouldn't be surprised to find at all that these things would trend together. Does that mean that it causes... I mean, maybe to some degree. Probably what it does is it causes the mediating factors to get worse, right? Alienation is absolutely increased by social media. Sense of lack of belongingness, sense of hopelessness is absolutely increased. There's nothing worse than 19-year-olds trying to figure out how to solve Israel and Gaza on their own, in their own little heads, and feeling so distressed about it that they're like setting themselves on fire and doing like crazy, stupid shit like that. I feel like it's only a matter of time before we kind of see how damaging this is. And so I guess when you say like it's correlated, it's like, sure, but the difference is, are we saying it's correlated in like an uninteresting way, like how crime and ice cream sales are correlated, or is it correlated in a very important way, such as, for example, how depression is correlated with suicide, right? And has some probably predictive power for it, even though most depressed people don't end up killing themselves. So that's what I think is really complicated here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that social media use does predict suicidality. That wouldn't shock me at all.
Are you guys in favor of Ron DeSantis's ban here? I mean, because it seems like you're just more describing the issue with social media and minors as opposed to necessarily harassment policy.
I mean, I'm describing harassment policy for the extreme stuff specifically. I don't personally have a solution to the like being mean on the internet, other than like promoting pro-social behavior.
So just to make sure we're talking about the same thing here, can you define what you mean by the Ron DeSantis ban?
So my understanding is Ron DeSantis recently signed. I think it's going to be challenged, so I don't know if it's going to be removed or not. But recently signed a bill to limit social media to, I think it's like,
14 and under.
yeah, it's like 14.
It's
and then with parental permission.
HB3, and it's people age 14 and below cannot become social media account users. Owners.
Yeah, and then it's between 14 and 16, you can with parental permission. And then after 16, you can do it on your own.
I don't discount an idea as bad just because a Republican says it. So I don't know if that is the specific policy I would advocate. I do think we need to think about what all these things are doing to our children. I mean, I remember when Facebook first came along and then they started letting children use it, right? That was a wild time. So I don't know if I would support that policy because I would want to do it in conjunction with more studies. But I think something like that is something we really need to be thinking about. And just one more thing on this. You know, so much of my job is talking to people, and I would say when I want to connect with someone that's a Republican or a Democrat, just in any political situation, I ask them what they think about like what Insta is doing to their kids, right? And every parent I know has extremely, extremely strong opinions about this. I don't know a parent that's not worried about the toxic culture their teenage boys are being exposed to in like these online shooters, right? So I think it is a difficult, nuanced policy question about how we get there. But what I'm not happy to keep doing is nothing.
I think we also have to be aware of the scope of the effect size, right? In these longitudinal studies that hundreds of researchers have done at this point, looking at the effect of mental health as a result of social media use, social media is more shown to be more harmful for the brains and well-being of young individuals than lead is connected to loss of IQ. That means social media, we know, is affecting kids' well-being more than we even know that lead is, to a larger effect, which is very robust. That means it's also larger than we understand vitamin C to be effective for like immunoboosting. So this effect size that we're talking about is about R.15, which is a very large effect size when you're talking about like universal generalized populations. It should be concerning to us, particularly with this developmental wing. And then the conversation about like the criminal behaviors that occur online, it's kind of separate, but obviously tangentially tied.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not convinced that this actually fits well with your proposition, though, because I think one of the main issues, one of the main mental health stressors that happens due to social media and the internet is the fact that children are being connected to a massive world which is criticizing them. So if we're going to be getting rid of anonymity, if we're doing that to teens, we're doing that to 20s, we're doing that to everybody. We're making it so if we're talking about anonymity needs to go, I don't think that that's going to improve people's mental health. I think that's going to make it worse. Because now all these cancellation documents, what is the thing that makes a TwitLonger so brutal? Is that it exposes private details about you to the entire world. How do you parse those positions?
I guess for me, the anonymity here isn't directly connected to this because I think I already talked that I'd be super open to looking at anonymity specifically for youth. I think anytime we're talking about youth, I think we have something unique going on here. So, it seems to be the case, for example, that we know that youth are most sensitive to peer-to-peer like interactions between like 12 to 15. It has the largest impact on their psyche. That's the developmental window. So for example, when I'm talking about social media, by the way, I'm not just talking about social media criticism and harassment of having this large of an effect size on well-being. I'm talking about social media exposure, like overexposure specifically. And so I don't know the perfect solution. I don't know how much specifically calling each other mean is what's driving this rise in mental health. We actually haven't parsed it apart. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that sleep disturbances and things like for the teens specifically, and upward comparisons are probably larger issues. So I would still be willing to stand by getting rid of anonymity for adults.
I do want to separate the conversations here because we there's two to have, one for children and one for adults, right? And what policies we want to craft for children There's a bipartisan bill, right, that's being released soon. It's got wide bipartisan support. It's called the Kids Online Safety Act. I haven't looked into the details yet. I was planning to do it soon, but something like that where they craft it specifically for minors, I think that we can have more latitude to craft different policies that restrict freedoms. But when it comes to things like adults, I think that there's a separate conversation that we need to have that's not tied together. So if we can, I'd like to separate those two things, because I'm with you. When it comes to online shit that's happening to kids, there's a difference between that and when it happens to a 30-year-old man, right? And so when we talk about things like Call of Duty lobbies and things like that, and when we talk about things like Ron DeSantis's bill, maybe the solution is simply to remove children from these spaces.
Yeah.
So the issue is, if you look at the research I studied, just as much as I just told you how bad social media is, there's a Goldilocks effect, which is that there's 2 points. If you look at the graph that's like in the research thing.
Which page is this?
Oh.
Page 2? Should kids be banned from social media? That chart.
There we go. I'll
Yeah.
just copy the image and post it in our group chat again, so we can all just look at it easily.
Okay.
No, it's not copying for me. Hold on.
Technical difficulties, kings and queens. We'll get there. I know.
Grace, hold on. I have to screenshot the image because it won't copy the image. Okay,
The Goldilocks-
basically,
Go ahead.
I'll talk as I'm doing this. So basically, when you look at this graph, there's it goes like this. So well-being starts low, it goes higher, and then it drops off, particularly after like hour 3, hour 4. Kids who never get access to social media actually have a very negative impact on their mental well-being as well, probably because they're socially isolated from their peers. So there is an interesting question, which would be, if none of their peers have social media, would we see the Goldilocks effect disappear? Probably. That would be my assumption, right? But also, if we're not willing to wholesale ban 14-year-olds off the internet, then the solution can't be no social media. It has to be modified amounts of social media, which immediately comes back to, unfortunately, and kind of my favorite thing as a liberal, preventative parent education, right? Like the
Yes.
reality is that it has to be handled in the house. I don't know if it will be, but there definitely needs to be like better courses. I don't know if you've ever gone to an internet safety course, but my treatment center for the women always used to run it. And the chick who would come in, I swear, had to ask me every time how to project her PowerPoint onto the screen. And she was the one giving like the internet safety education to these like women. And I was just like, this is insane. I'm so tired of boomers giving other boomers fucking internet education. It's terrible. But there is an interesting question about essentially saying like, how do you teach parents how to have their kids be safe on the internet? What are healthy strategies? What is a healthy amount for their kids to be on the internet? Which probably varies by the kid a little bit. And how do you implement this at a large level? Probably schools should get rid of phones. There's just not really a big need for them to be on their smartphones all day at school.
Well, the argument against that would be if there's a school shooter situation, a lot of parents don't feel comfortable with their kids not having their phone on them because they want to know if they're safe and things like that. So there is that tension there, that there are some use cases for having a phone in case of emergencies.
That's
and I
not
think
a compelling argument to me, to be honest.
Fair enough.
School shootings are
The same argument to never travel in
are
an
so
airplane.
rare.
Yeah.
Firstly, and what if the solution here is just like for minors using social media? You know how like Google Safe Search or like Facebook will blur images that it sees as offensive. Like that's just like on for people under the age of 18, and then when you turn 18, it turns off, and then that's like the solution. Seems like a pretty reasonable and then AI can determine like what's the harmful images.
Okay, on two angles here, I'm confused because on one, children are just going to lie, right? They're going to lie so that they have access to the internet. But beyond that, if the websites create workarounds, were you guys not smart enough to get around these workarounds as a child? Did you not know about Tor browser when you were like 16? Did you not figure these things out? If it wasn't around, I mean, we have some people that are older, but it's like kids want to have access to this stuff. Their older brothers, their siblings. I was taught very, very early how to get into the places of the internet that would have caused me to be a suicidal teen.
Have you ever seen War Games? Have you ever seen this? That's what I was doing at 16, hacking BBSs like that. So
I was I was in the AOL chat rooms, and you can blame that for all the issues that I have today, perhaps. No, that I'm being a little facetious there, but yes, they will lie, but there are more tools now, right? And I think that when it comes down, so here's the thing: like, I'm all for this, but like, I'm all for people. You mentioned Brianna. You mentioned earlier how when you talk to parents, one of their main concerns is the stuff that they're exposed to online, such as in Call of Duty lobbies and on their video games and on Instagram and all these things. How many of those parents that were concerned limited their kids' screen time? That's my question.
All of them are, and this, Kyla, this gets to your point, which I thought was so well said. Parents are begging for better tools on this. Parents are begging to know what to do. They don't know this stuff. They are boomer brained, and they don't know what the best course of action is. We've decided our government is not going to play any role in helping them understand that. So again, coming back to what were the ADL's recommendations on this, it was labeling, like we do with the ESRB, right, about violence in games. I don't care how libertarian you are, surely you don't have any issue with there being labeling on, say, a video game, so a parent can have the information if their child's going to be in a voice chat that's a free-for-all. Like, we all agree that's a good idea, right? So give parents better tools to do this stuff. There is a paucity of, like, information about how to handle it.
Does anyone have
what
any
those tools would look like? Because depending on what tool it is, I do think that there are great opportunities here.
I just gave you one, DSRB. I just gave you one.
The Google Images Safe Search, right? It blurs everything that it detects as bad, right? You just install that on social media sites for under 18-year-olds. I feel like this could just work.
If we're talking about like 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds, that'll work. But the ages when people are at suicidality due to social media use, these are the ages when people are figuring out how to use their Samsung smart fridge to send a tweet. Like, kids will, I'm having difficulty understanding how in an increasingly diversely technological world and house place that parents are going to be able to implement these tools across all of their technologies in the house, in the school, at other people's houses. I just think kids are going to find a way.
But Tuna Chip, even if that's the case, do we not think that there is a value in putting up extra obstacles? It's because not all the kids are geniuses like us, gang. So I'm gonna give you guys a secret here. Some kids are retarded. Okay, it's just true. Okay, and we can protect them. And I think maybe we should. Would that be?
And parents are going to be able to see it better too. Like, for example, just because some kids sneak into bars doesn't mean we don't card.
Sure. And
there is no policy you could ever pass that's going to stop 12-year-old boys from looking at boobs, right? But there are some common sense things you can do to make it a little bit harder for them to see, like, hardcore BDSM, like 30 gangbang, like whatever, right? Just because something is not 100% effective does not mean it's not worth doing.
Sure. I guess when I think about this issue, and maybe I'm wrong here, when it comes to the, quote, retarded kids, the first thing that comes to mind is retarded parents that don't care. When it comes to suicidal children, I'm thinking about chronically blind people. I'm talking about people who will, are we going to ban GitHub? There are going to be people making counter technologies for this censorship, and they're going to be able to just find it pretty easily. Whenever, like, the nature of the internet is such that I only imagine two possible directions. The tools aren't strong enough to affect the people who are really the people we're trying to get to, or the tools are so strong that we all consider them unreasonable.
Hold on. Does anyone think that keeping kids and adults in separate spaces is unreasonable? I don't.
Not that it's unreasonable. I just don't think it's possible.
Not to 100%. I agree, but we can work on the margins here. But I want to talk for the last portion of this. I want to move away from the children and talk about the adults, because as adults, as content creators, as people who are in the online space, even if you've never streamed a day in your life, all of us, every single person faces harassment, faces people who will tell you the most horrific things about you, right? I wonder what tools we can implement to keep that from happening. One of the reasons that we started talking about this was because of the hatred and things that grown people were doing to other grown people on video games. Like, I don't know if you all saw this. Asmongold responded to this a while ago, but there was a woman online who was streaming Valorant, I believe the game was, and during the course of the game, she kept people told her that they were going to rape her, or she was very rapeable and these things. Pretty horrific, right? She used these reporting tools. She used these tools that were developed. Nothing happened. This person's still playing ranked games. What do we do about that? Can we switch to that for a minute? What would your solution be?
People saying that were blocked?
No, they weren't. I don't know if they blocked them, to be clear. I don't know if they muted them. I am unfamiliar with Valorant specifically and their tools, but I imagine that they have muting tools. But that is the question, right? Should she have not just muted him and moved on?
So one of the problems I've found in this space over my career, Wick, is these companies love to do window dressing for a problem, but they tend to not measure how well things are going. So one of the courses of action, like if we're looking at lessening the amount of anti-Semitic slurs that people are getting, like really explicit, like, just imagine something wildly anti-Semitic I'm saying here, that would be very, very TOS and include a death threat. You've got to measure how well that's actually working. Like, are your tools actually working? So this is one of the reasons the ADL Policy Center for a really long time has advocated doing audits, independent audits, to see how well these are doing. And I would like to see those numbers put out publicly. We've seen this with Twitter. Elon Musk will talk about how much, how great his trust and safety team is, but it's all internal numbers. We've got to trust his reporting on that, and I don't. So I think that pressure to basically have external independent auditing, I think that's really important.
Comments? Any other thoughts on this? If not, we can just go to super chats.
If it's just, we're just talking about like pressure to moderate more. If that's kind of the crux of what we're concerned about when it comes to this shit, I'm fine with terms of like moderating more for illegal conduct. I think that's kind of where we have to look. But if I want to, for example, like, let's say I want to have like a place where anti-Semitic jokes are being made, I believe I should be allowed to do that, right? I mean, do we agree?
Yeah, I think we've stipulated this many times.
So we could make a I hate tuna chip subreddit. I could make an I hate tuna chip Discord, and that wouldn't be harassment, though. That feels harassy.
It's not necessarily that it
There's
wouldn't
going to
be
be
harassment.
extents, right? This is the issue with even criminal or civil law, is that when does defamation occur specifically? This is where I think our courts are actually super useful. This is why I always talk about, specifically with adult to adult online stuff, there just has to be an expansion of what we consider criminal on the internet specifically, because that's the Wild West. The fact that only a couple states have revenge porn laws is kind of crazy to me. And so what would be wonderful is that these courts would do a really good job of outlining when it's just being a meanie bobini on the internet and saying a couple of awful, to be clear, awful things, versus when it constitute criminal levels of online harassment. I think that would be a really interesting thing for the courts to manage, and I don't see it as outside of their scope of being able to do. What is outside of their scope probably right now is effectively finding these people, charging them, and bringing them to justice. Essentially,
a comment on just real quick, a comment on the video game thing that was made in my chat, and if true, it's an interesting wrinkle into this. One of the reasons in Europe that you can't moderate voice chat is because there's rules and laws about storing voice data. So the government people can't access these, and you can't store it, right? You can't save it and things like that. So there's no real way to prove if you're being harassed on voice chat and things like that.
You have to be in the room at the time.
Yeah,
Again,
I do
America's
wonder.
is better. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I do wonder to the extent of privacy, right? Is there a concern on that? I want to pass it to Wu on this, and I want to get Tuna Chips thing. And then after Tuna Chip goes, we're going to go to Super Chats, and we're going to go to closings, and we'll go to call-ins after. So go ahead.
Before that, if I can, I've got a thing that I want to do as an interjection, but I'll take that with my statement. So
Okay.
Okay. No, I think that's well said, Wick. I don't really have a follow-up on that. I think it's, I think most people that followed GDPR being passed came to the conclusion it was a hastily written, poorly designed policy that did some good things and did a whole bunch of bad things. And I think you've just outlined one of the bad things it managed to do.
Fair enough. Okay, gang. Let me read these Super Chats really quick, and then we'll get to the closing thoughts. And then, gang, for a little bit at least, we're going to take your calls. So if you have big opinions on this, if you're sitting here at home and like, man, these guys, they've missed the point, or they should be talking about this instead when it comes to harassment, or I have solved it all. If you're one of those people, click that exclamation point, you type exclamation point Discord and chat, click the link, accept the rules, jump backstage, and we'll pull you on for a little bit. Probably do it for another 20, 30 minutes. But let me get these Super Chats, make a little money. Here we go. So, $10 from Pondering Politics to say, remind Lactoid Trump has actually said shit like that in regards to the, oh my, they should harass me. They're all harassing me. He also says he will use his DOJ to go after MSNBC. Thank God he'll vote Biden this year. So thank you for the $10. I'm sure we can have a panel on that on another day.
I didn't know Trump was a progressive. It's crazy. I'm surprised you guys aren't voting for him.
I'm assuming he meant you're voting for Trump. He was Biden, I should say. I think he's implying it. But let's keep going. Rude Mud Crab for $10 says, really happy Brianna could sponsor this panel to cover her current personal issues. Looking forward to next week's panel on do those heels make my butt look bigger. So first of all, she can pay me money anytime she wants. I'm okay with it. But second of all, this isn't a personal issue. This is happening to everyone at all times and in all places to varying degrees. So I don't know.
Thirdly, I don't need to wear heels, bitch. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm good.
Hey, there we go. $2.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is such a stupid line. Do you know how many people get personally interested in topics because they've had personal experience with it? Welcome to like 90% of researchers on the planet.
Yeah.
It's so welcome to every addiction counselor practically out there. It's such a stupid argument.
it would have been better if we had a white Martin Luther King, because at least then he wouldn't have been biased, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
$2 from Eddie Pupils to say Wick song on my channel. I'll look at your song later, buddy. Thank you for making a song. Or why did you ever make that song for me? I'll find out when I listen to it. Thank you. €10 from Big Hoth 98. These watchdog NGOs that Brianna want running things have time and again proved that they are incapable of nuanced views, and instead it just continues to be a way to purge political adversaries.
I did not. I was referenced. I did not claim NGOs should be in charge of this. Play the whole panel back. I never said that.
Fair enough. $5 from Slongy and Stu. Hey, Wick, what discussions do you have coming up in the next week or so? We would love to take part another time. DM me and we'll talk about it. £5 from Simon Allen. Good work, Wick, for putting up with Not So Erudite. Give me money for putting up with Not So Erudite anytime.
Simon Allen is an overly aggressive fan.
Wow.
Is he? Okay.
Yes.
It's
Ellen,
a challenge.
Ellen Degenerate for $5. How much do I have to donate for you to tell me how much Rebellion Pack paid for this? More than you have. So fair enough. If you want to try, we can find out together. If you keep giving me money, I'll tell you when you've reached the limit. How's that? Okay, gang. With that,
you have to meet it, and it's a guess.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like
when you
bring
get
the trailer rules. I love it.
Wick, before we do our final statements, I made something in preparation because I did want to underline where technology is going. I want to make my point clear in terms of why I don't think that this is capturable, because the technologies we're aware of, the government's aware of, any regulating body will become irrelevant by the time that they get passed. Kyla, I think that you're going to want to be here for this.
I'm listening. I can hear you. Sorry,
Okay, what is it? Is it?
Well,
I'm worried. I'm concerned. But go ahead.
Don't be too worried. I just pulled together a little song using some of the new AI technologies. I saw a tweet that came out recently where people are talking about how children are using Suno to make songs to bully each other. And I thought, okay, what if we took all of the things that have been said about all of the content creators on this panel, except for me, of course, I'm in the protected class and this is the person making it, and we saw what AI would do in terms of making a song about it. So here it is.
You're not so irritated. Yeah, that's an understatement. An IQ so low, it's looking like Nick's bank statement.
Damn.
Spitting rhymes like the blood libel Israel's dark red in the American style. Calling the retard wrangler, DMing total strangers, asking them to be crazy in exchange for online favors. Sorry about the friendly fire. Gotta build my Twitch empire. Sunday calling like he's the T was on fire. Yeah, next up it's Brianna Wood. And it's a fucking suit. Strangers calling you a truth. Throwing shit like a baboon. Oh, you got your checkbook. Turning to his textbook. Hope you like this next hook. Because it's going personal. Revolution 60 going on 80. Career plan, I got your wish. Looks like you're menstruating. $1 million down the drain. Disappearing like David Blaine. Boy, he's starving like Soviets with no fucking brain. The name is Lactoid Starboy, no joy, all boys. If I had $1, I'd bet you collect Playboys. Voluntary manslaughter. Check the age of his daughter. Libertarian man sucking off black water. This platform like a trampoline. If you was all just bounce, better take your Dramamine flow. So easy and for oblivion. That was evidence. There's no suppressing what's in common. Online hate will keep on humming. Singularity soon becoming. Started cunning. Always. Governments can't tackle God. The US, UN on both sides. Damn, the urge is growing strong.
Okay.
We just play unplug your computer. Unplug your computer.
Okay.
Okay. You've won.
Okay.
You've won.
I get
we
it.
surrender.
I got it.
We surrender. We surrender. Thank you. That actually was really good. Thank you to the AI gods.
Video games is a serious issue that must be addressed. We need to enforce stricter policies on platforms, educate users on respectful behavior, and provide support for victims. It's crucial to create a safe and inclusive gaming environment for everyone.
Okay. It was funny. It was good. Let's go to closing statements so I can get some call-ins. But that was wonderful. Thank you. That's going to count as your closing statement.
Video games. We must prioritize education, reporting systems, and community moderation. Empowering individuals to speak out against harassment, creating safer spaces, and holding perpetrators accountable are crucial steps in combating this issue.
Tuna, brevity is the soul of wit.
Collaborative efforts from game developers.
Okay, enough.
I didn't mean to make it that. I didn't mean to make it keep going. I wanted to stop there.
Okay, thank you.
You also got one with your voice, Wick.
Let's go to closing statements. We'll start with Erudite. We'll end with Woo. Erudite, what you got? Close us out.
I already did my closing statement. Basically, whatever that version of me said.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay. Blacktoid, what you got?
I think it's true that you can say anything you want as long as you put it in a song. You'll be okay. And actually, I think that this is the solution to all internet censorship. Just put it in a song and then you can say it. If you like what I had to say, you can find me at Liketoy TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube.
Check him out, gang. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate you. Last but certainly not least, Brianna Wu. Go ahead.
I feel like that song was contradictory. Do I look like a troon or do I look like I'm menstruating? Feels like you need to pick one of the two there. No, I think this is a really good policy discussion tonight. Kyla, if you don't have any objections, I would love to put the research document that you did in the show notes tonight. Can we put that in a Google Doc? It really is, like so many of these discussions on this, it comes to the same old tired talking points. There is a lot of research out there. It's not conclusive. We need to do more of it. You can look at the research itself. It shows areas that they want more researchers to look at on this so we can come to better policy answers. If you take one thing from this tonight, I think it would be this is an area of policy worth taking seriously, and that doesn't have to mean the same old tired 2014 SJW playbook. There are more sophisticated ways to approach this problem.
Excellent. Gang, this has been great. This has been awesome. Thank you for coming. I hope you check all these people out, but we're not done yet. We got some call-ins. I see some of you backstage. You're all raring and ready to go. So if you guys have a few minutes, I know you might have to go, Lactoid, but if the rest of you have a few minutes, we can bring in callers. Is that cool with everyone?
Let's do it.
Beautiful. Let's bring on the first guest here. I will try to get it in the order that you guys came in, but some of you were here for a while, so we'll see what I can do. You're live.
Yamato,
what's up?
Hey, I didn't know I got pulled in. I was watching the stream.
Oh, now you're live. What you got for us?
So I was wondering how there are hold up. Let me get out the words. I was wondering how would you incentivize people to be at least a little nicer. I come from a gaming background, so like, how would you enforce gaming lobbies to be a little nicer? I don't think. I just want to know.
Anyone want to take this?
Helldivers made a good job designing a game that made it so that people aren't in an oppositional relationship. That tends to make things less toxic. At least that's boiled out pretty good. That's the main thing that comes to me, is that it's on the game designer. Obviously, making it so that you can report people, and if you're in the United States, record their data, like's been said before. You would ban away abuse, but everyone else has like systems where they have to ban. Like League of Legends have like a toxic gamer like ban, and those things still don't work to this day. We still have people DMing, making death threats. Like, how would you incentivize companies to be do more of a crackdown on people being toxic?
Well, that's actually a good question. Like, we talk about these policies and things. What incentive do companies have to even adopt these?
Well, I think the ideal way to do it is to basically show that the user base wants this. Every single time I've gotten a policy passed, it was by showing there's basically a market for it. I don't know what kind of games y'all play, but I don't enjoy getting dumb bitch. Why did I go down in the dungeon? Learn to res, all that. Basically blaming the white mage in Final Fantasy. There's it's not a fun experience for me. So I don't think it has to be this Orwellian, like, nightmarish thing. I think it can just be advocating a better user experience.
Any other answers?
I had a thought. It's not one we want, but the main place where this stuff has been taken more seriously is not in games. It's been in places like YouTube. And I think it's mostly that the incentive has to hit them financially. It might be sponsorship. It might be the idea that businesses start taking money from sponsors, and sponsors apply financial pressure. Games like Fortnite, open service games, might be the ones that end up taking these policies the most seriously, because they have the most to lose, because it's not coming from individual users, coming from their financiers.
Very good.
One last thing I want to say. Someone
briefly, we got a bit of a line I want to get to.
Yeah. I know. Someone said something about waiting for not being able to monitor voice chats. PlayStation has done this already, where if you're in a party chat, they do listen and monitor it when the party is done to make sure there's no like threats or anything that has happened. And that's all I want to say.
Well, thanks for being here. What a good caller. Thanks for calling in, gang. This person was next. Hello, you're live. What you got?
Oh, hello. I'm just going to make this like a little quick. I was wondering, what are your stances? I think it tangentially fits into the question you're asking, but what do you think of stochasticism in regards to like where a person would say a thing about a person and they'll say, oh, don't go after this person. but then the people that follow them go after them. Like what your take? What's your take
like
on that matter?
hey, I'm not saying to harass this person, wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of thing. Is that what you're talking?
Yeah, basically. Like, what's your people's take on it? That's the question.
What do we got, gang?
I've always loved Destiny's take on this. He said this a while back, and I heard it, and I loved it, that he doesn't buy this argument that you can't control your community, and I think you can point to a lot of instances where he has changed some policies, and it's led to a healthier community. I think the DGG of probably 2 years ago was a little bit more reflexively misogynist than it is today, and because of that, it's a place I certainly spend more time. I think that's a positive. So I also, Lactoid, this is coming back to something you said earlier, and that's, I think that sometimes the SJW argument for stochastic terrorism, and just the rhetoric around this, I think it can be overstated at the same time. So I think there's a middle ground on this, basically.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I part of this whole panel discussion really has been, and then I got to bounce. Part of this whole panel discussion really has been, it seems as though we already have so much moderation, and things are being alleged to be terrorism, things are being alleged to be violence, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we, 20 years from now, calling someone's mom fat is considered violence or considered stochastic terrorism against fat people. I could see that occurring. And the fact that I can see that occurring, I think is unfortunate.
Okay.
I mean, we're having such an aggressive snap right culturally. I doubt that'll happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Fair enough.
A lot of those right-wingers, the right-wingers in general, their policy has been pull your kids out of the school, get them out of this system, abandon what is considered to be a liberal-dominated space with no hope of XYZ. So they kind of look like they're running with their tail between their legs. You're getting a couple of people trying to, with the
and bureaucratic crap,
fucking licensing and inspections and Jesus, just, oh my god. But yeah, that's been my Monday, and towing a truck around. It's been a delight. How's your Monday been?
Oh, pretty good. Lots of teaching. But it sounds like your food, this is a recent purchase, and it sounds like you're looking for approval to serve food, and I guess I don't know how it works in the food truck.
Yeah, I bought the truck I want to say 6 months ago. I've been just working on it here and there. It's fucking it's just a money sink, and so yeah, I've been working on that, filling up, and then now we're ready for inspection. So it's just waiting on inspections, and yeah, I'm already food management approved and all that bullshit.
Oh, that's cool.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead. I was gonna say has this pretty much been in your plans for a while, or this a spontaneous thing, or you've been saving up for a while?
It was spontaneous. Me and my mom had a house we bought. We sold it, and then I used a little bit of the money to get the truck, and yeah, kind of a spontaneous thing. I found it was $15,000. Right, you kind of don't pass up
doing a food truck.
Yeah, I couldn't pass up the price. So $15,000, bought it. Had to put some work, and I put $5 into it so far. But a business under $25,000-$30,000 is pretty elite.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. The food trucks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And they're a lot of work, more work than people realize. And I'm sure you realize how much work.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can be a very solid, honest business. So I got my support. I really hope it works out for you, friend.
I appreciate it. Gibbs is having the best time.
Yeah, I'm living the dream.
So okay, you can see this sometimes with Gibbs' camera, it freezes in humorous positions, which is fun, right? For the whole family, especially when he's rocking out. But the person I wanted to call out with, don't shake your head, you FQ, with your 20 FPS camera. What is going? This has been for a while. Your camera's been like this. I've been hoping it's going to be improved.
Actually, that's her. She lives in 20 FPS, real life. That's.
You crapping